Alright, so first pre-step in this process, I've already marked all the pilot holes where they're gonna go. So I'm gonna drill out those holes, get everything ready, because tomorrow starts the process. Alright, to catch you up on what's happened so far, we have measured the line where the Fender Flare is going to sit. We're doing our initial cut of the actual fender for the wheel fitment, and we've made a line 1 inch above the actual fender line right here. It's just a 1 inch marked line. That's going to be the first cut. Then we're going to put the wheel back on. We're going to lower it down. We're going to see where the wheel sits then, and we're going to continue that process until we've got the wheel, the fender and the wheel as close as we want them for final fitment. Alright, update. We've made the first cut, and we're putting the wheel back on so we can lower it back down to make sure we got a good gap, or if we need to cut a little more. If so, we're going to measure and then make that cut. So slow progress, but I'd rather take my time and know that I'm not cutting too much, and because you can't put the metal back. So we're doing little cuts at a time. Alright, so like I showed before, this here is going to be where the Fender Flare is going to sit. I've marked the holes. Initially I was going to go higher, but we're going to go lower because it'll actually set better. It'll give more tuck in the wheel well. So first cut's been made, and then we're going to go from there. That's the inner fender liner that's inside there. That's what you're seeing. Okay, so what we did was we lowered the car all the way down. We determined that we need to trim just this much more, and the car will actually be bottomed out on my air ride settings. So we're gonna bring it back up, we're gonna take the wheel off, we're gonna make that cut, and then we're gonna trim the inner fender liner and get that taken care of, and then move on to the next. Okay, we have made all the cuts we're gonna make on this one. This is absolutely bottomed out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim this back here just a little bit, shave it down just so it's level. But this is at my completely bottomed out setting. So basically, for all the Charger guys out there, there's a flat lip that goes along the edge of the fender here. That is the spot where I ended up cutting at. You can see the end here. This is the end of that little raised area. Basically, that is this line all the way around. I didn't have to trim out where the light was at, but I did have to trim where the bracket is for the connector right there. So keep that in mind. Basically, the first bolt is gone. All right, that's final fitment right there. Camber on the wheel when it drops. But yeah, one down. Okay, we're moving on to the rear fender for the driver's side. So once I get into the process, I forget the video, so I'm gonna explain everything we're doing beforehand. I've marked the outline of the fender and where all of the holes are gonna go for the screws. What we found on the front fender was pretty much at this body line right here where this body line is pretty much the cut mark for the wheel to poke out just enough for the fender. So it won't be touching when we actually air the car out. So as of now, front fender is sitting there all done. And then we're gonna move on to this one here and start the process. Okay, I've just made my first cut on the rear and I'm basing it off of how the cut was on the front, basically at this body line. So I've made the cut at the body line. Now I'm gonna drop the wheel, drop the car down and air it down to see how close we are to touching on the tire itself. All right, so I've just finished all of my cuts for the rear wheel. So what you're gonna see here is I'm right at that tail marker. The cut went up, which probably didn't need to go as drastic up, but I just wanted to make sure we followed that body line all the way across. And for those of you with this Charger, if you're gonna do this, we did have to cut into the doorway right there. That's gonna be cleaned up. We're gonna put some truck bed liner spray on it and also have a plastic cover to go over the exposed metal also after it's painted to make sure that we don't have any cuts on the tire and we keep the area free of rust. So now it's on to drilling the holes and actually mounting the fender onto the car. Okay, it's day 2. Before we go too far in depth into today's process, which is going to be the same as yesterday on the other side, but knowing that where my cut lines are going to be, I'm hoping today will go a little bit faster as far as the cut and fit portion. But before I get started, I wanted to take a minute to kind of go over some of the stuff I used in the process. So I use my jigsaw to do all the actual cutting. And I made sure to have a blade that's 32 teeth per inch for metal cutting. And that really made the process a lot faster. I'm walking through the garage now to find it. So as long as it was 32 teeth per inch jigsaw blades. What I did for my pilot holes, I used the Cleco clips. You see the Cleco clips sticking out of there. That's an 1/8 inch, 1/8 Cleco clip. So all of my pilot holes into the car were 1/8, so that the Cleco clip could hold the panel on the car. The actual well nut that I'm going to use to attach to the car is a 3/8. So I have a 3/8 bit, and when I'm done with painting and everything else, I'll drill the 3/8 holes for the well nuts to go into, and that will be where the screw actually mounts into the car. So that's that portion further on, into tomorrow when I get into painting. But as of now, I wrote a little checklist of what still has to be done to the driver's side. I'm gonna clean up where we cut, use truck bed liner and primer over the exposed metal, and then we bought, they're like the things you put in the doors of the car, like the trim, and I'm gonna place a piece of the trim over that exposed metal, just one to reinforce keeping it clean, and also having some other surface over the metal in the event that if the car were to slam down or something happened, it wouldn't be just bare metal going into the tire. There's some kind of little buffer in between. May not be much, but in my thinking, that's kind of what I think would help. So basically fit and finish on the driver's side. Before I finally torque in the wheel spacers, hub-centric wheel spacers, I'm going to clean the surface of the rotor and clean the surface of the wheel so that there's no rust or debris in between the hub and the wheel spacer, and the wheel spacer and the actual wheel. So those are kind of final fit and finish things that's going to happen. But today is passenger side, so here shortly I'm gonna get started on the driver's side, or the passenger side front. Knowing what we know from yesterday, it's easy to make the cut now on the actual cut line of where the body line is on these chargers, so specifically to these chargers. Okay, so like I was referring to, if you look on these chargers, this is a 16. This flat panel, this body line right here, that is pretty much the area that needs to be cut to accommodate for the drop and for when the actual wheel pokes out. So basically, I'm gonna start on this corner, gonna just bring our cut up, catch that body line, and follow that body line all the way over till we get to over here. And pretty much where this little little clip is, that's pretty much the point. Just past it is where the ending point is. So that's where the cut line is that I'm using. Okay, all of the cutting has been done, the fenders have been fit. Right now I've already scuffed the fender flares, cleaned them with degreaser, and set them to dry. Then I'll be able to start painting them. But right now, no fender flares on the car. Fenders cut up. I'm at my high height for my air ride. Looks like something out of Fast and Furious now. All jacked up with big wheels, big tires on it, poking out. All right, so another step we got to talk about is before the fender flares go on permanent, inside the fender wells, we will have to put some sealant in the gaps there where the fenders are separated. So seam sealer, and then the paint, and the bed liner paint that I'm going to use to kind of seal everything in. But seam sealer inside the fender wells where the gaps are now because it was cut, and then it'll be weatherproofed and good for the long term. So what I'm talking about as far as seam sealer, right in between these two pieces of the outer skin and this inner fender wall, it's not like other cars where it comes down really deep, but it's back there, so there's got to be a sealer put in there to weatherproof it.
All right, so it is now Sunday morning early. A little update on progress we made yesterday. All of the exposed metal underneath that's been cut has been sanded clean, and I have put this truck bed liner over it to coat it and protect it. And then after I get the fender flares painted today, they will go over top of all this, so the actually darkening that helps kind of hide the white paint underneath. So in this process, one of the things I have learned is drill bits will be your downfall. For the Charger guys, inside this door well is reinforced metal. It's like it's been there's weld points in there, and if the flare is not in the right spot on the door, it's almost impossible to drill through it. So I went through a lot of drill bits because as they're going through each hole in the car, it just kept getting more dull and more dull. So drill bits were an issue. I'm not using the rib nuts that came with the kit. I'm using a rubber well nut. So the holes on my car had to be drilled to a 3/8, and that is it's a bigger hole, but I can pull it off anytime I want to, and it's not going to damage the car any further to have to take the rib nuts out. So just progress this morning. The car is sitting here. It's been I stayed up till 10 o'clock or later last night, sanding and spraying this to keep to kind of get ahead of what's going on today. So today we're going to finish drilling all the holes. We're going to use the seam sealer inside the wheel wells where the metal is exposed to close those out. And at the same time, the car will probably be outside doing that, and I will be inside the garage here painting the fender flares. Hopefully everything gets kind of done, and by end of day today, the painted flares and the seams should be filled, and the car should be 100% complete. That's the goal.
All the seam sealing has been done. The plastic primer has been put on, the adhesion promoter, and I am first coat in on painting the flares. Okay, this is end of day 3. The issues we had to overcome in the last day, every drill bit I tried to use to drill through the body would get dull before I could get 2 or 3 done. Then I had a friend tell me that I needed to get one of the cone-shaped step-down hole makers in titanium. Got one of those, and it went through everything like butter. So, David, I want to say thank you for that piece of advice. That saved me hours of additional work and headache and stress. I want to thank my friend Joe, who does body work, and he informed me and helped me do the seam seal, make sure all that was secure. He helped me cut the rear fender flares and made that better. And it's still a work in progress. There's still some tweaks that need to be made. But I especially want to thank my friend Ashley. He was right there with me right from the first cut, and it's good when you have friends that come and support you when you're doing something extremely out of your normal levels of, car mods. So without further ado, here's the current status. There'll still be some tweaks, but this is where we are right now today, Sunday afternoon. All right, here's the car. It's aired out. The fender flares are painted. I painted them. I used the clinched flares New School XL, and these are the 7 centimeter, 2.7 I think is the inches. I used their Type 1 hardware. So there's that. The issues that I have overspray, where I sprayed everything underneath. So I have to give everything a couple days to cure, and then I can go back and clean that up. So just a little bit of overspray on that area. Each corner of the fender flares, they wrap around, and what I'm having is they want to kind of poke out. So I need to trim the back of them so that they'll sit flush. So again, if you look over on the front, more overspray. I just got to clean up the overspray. Same thing on the corner, needs to be trimmed up. Same on the other side. Overspray, trim the corners. Same on the back. The only other issues that, this is me doing it myself with a couple of friends, so another thing that I'm concerned with, the connection here at the door, we're gonna build a plastic brace to put behind this piece so that it stays flush. As of right now, it doesn't sit all the way flush, so we're gonna work on that. And same on the passenger side. The issue we have is where the bolts actually go through, it's actually touching the inside of the door. So I'll have to trim off the back of the bolt to make it set flush. So that's kind of around, the car, the issues that we had doing this ourselves. But yeah, that's kind of where it sits right now. So, clinched flares, New School XL on a 2016 Dodge Charger Scat Pack. 3 full days of work. Thanks for hanging with me through this whole process. I know of no one else who has done this on their own, so if I can answer questions if you have any, and just kind of let you know what I did and how I did it. So I don't even know if I really covered everything, but if you have questions, please feel free to just reach out to me. All right, off we go.